Hi, this is William from Great Affordable Watches, and today I'm gonna review the Christopher Ward C60 Trident Pro 600 Vintage, and this is the 38mm version. This is the vintage version of the quite popular C60 Trident Pro 600. The main difference between the vintage version and the standard C60 Trident Pro is that this model doesn't have a wave pattern on the dial. The ceramic bezel is matte black and it got vintage looking lume. Other than that, they are basically identical. Let's start off with the specs. The case size is 38mm in diameter. The height is 13.3mm. The lug-to-lug width is 20mm and the lug-to-lug length is 45.5mm. It weighs around 73 grams without a bracelet. It is 600 meter water resistant, so 60 ATM, and it got sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating on the inside and the ceramic bezel. The movement in this watch is either the ETA 2824 or the Sellita SW200. Those two movements are basically identical, and some people even say that the Sellita SW200 is a bit more accurate than the ETA 2824. But the design is identical, except that the Sellita got one extra jewel, so theoretically it would perform a bit better. And I guess that in this watch and most Christopher Ward watches, they use the SW200, but nonetheless that's a great movement and probably even better than the ETA. And I leave a Lume shot down in the description. Me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of the standard C60 Pro because I don't really like the wave pattern on the dial. So when I found this version with the vintage lume and the vintage feel and without the wave pattern, I instantly bought it because I have always been interested in owning a Christopher Ward diver, because I have heard many great things about their watches. So this is a very nice watch for my taste, and I must say I am very impressed with it. And especially the case size. I think it's pretty uncommon, and it's very nice to see a 38mm diver that got a well proportioned case and dial. So I think this is very nice, and that even though it's pretty thin and pretty small watch in general, it still got 600 meter water resistance, and that for me is very impressive. And I must say that Christopher Ward in general, some of their diving watches is a bit plain and boring and doesn't really offer anything new to the market. Yeah, they make great watches with great quality and great finishing on the case, but they are a bit boring in my opinion. But this vintage model in 38mm is sure very interesting. And me personally, I really like vintage inspired divers and vintage inspired watches in general, so this was almost a perfect match for me. And I personally like smaller watches, but I thought that this may be a bit too small, but when I got it, it fit my wrist perfectly, and for reference my wrist is 7 inches. So I think, in my opinion, even though Christopher Ward in general makes some uninteresting divers in my opinion, this watch is probably my favorite Christopher Ward diver. And yeah, Christopher Ward do make some very interesting watches with original design and in-house movements. So I'm just talking about their diving lineup. So let's start off with the dial. Some people are complaining about the logo, and yeah, it's not the prettiest logo out there, but They have come out with a new logo, which in my opinion looks even worse, unfortunately, so I prefer the older logo on this one. And overall, I think the dial is very nicely done, and the markers and the lume is almost perfectly applied. As we can see, the lume is vintage inspired. I think it's standard Super Luminova, so it's not vintage lume, it's just vintage looking lume. And one thing to note is that the lume pip here on the bezel is not matching the lume on the hands and the markers, but as we can see over the markers here, there are small green lume pips that match the bezel, so this gives it a bit more of a modern feel than it would otherwise have looked if the lume pip here on the bezel was vintage looking. And I also think that the bezel, the matte ceramic bezel, is very nicely done as well. It gives it a pretty unique look and very vintage inspired. And I think overall the watch face is very well made. If we turn it around, we can see that the caseback is not a see-through caseback, it is a solid caseback, and this is one of my favorite features on the watch. I think the caseback is extremely well executed, and the engraving is extremely well made, and I think this is probably the best solid caseback on an affordable watch that I have seen, at least. The only other caseback that comes to mind is on the Seiko SKX 007-009 with the wave on the caseback, and I think that is the only one that can really match this one. So I give a thumbs up for the caseback, and I think it's nice to see that they have not cheapened out on the caseback. The crown is of course signed, and I think the logo on the crown is actually the oldest Christopher Ward logo, so that's a bit weird. I don't know why they haven't updated the logo. I know they have done it now with the new generation. And the crown is satin, and the rest of the case is brushed and polished, so that's a bit weird as well, but the crown looks very good in my opinion. But the best feature of this watch is honestly the watch case and the design and the finishing on the case. And I think it is very nice to see that they have taken their time to actually design a unique case instead of the typical Rolex pre-ceramic submariners that we often see on affordable divers. So I think the watch design, the case design is very nicely done, and it feels and looks very good. And I think this is the feature that really sets this diver or Christopher Ward divers apart in general, and it's probably one of the best features on Christopher Ward divers. And I think the crown guards here look just fantastic, and I think it gives it a bit more unique look than typical affordable divers generally have. And of course the strap is very well made and matches the lume color perfectly, almost perfectly. So, and this strap is honestly very well made, and it feels great. The quality is great and the leather feels very solid. And one nice feature is that it's very easy to remove the strap, so you don't scratch the lugs. So yeah, overall I think this is a very good watch, and I'm gonna do a wrist shot now, so I'll be right back. Here it is, and I think it looks great on my 7-inch wrist. I thought it was going to look very small, but I honestly think that it fits very nicely. I would recommend this to anybody with wrists up to 7.5 inches, which is very nice to see that some manufacturers offer a smaller diver that can fit many different wrists. And before I end this video, I often hear the question, which diver is the best, Christopher Ward versus Steinhart? So I thought I'd do a more in-depth video comparing the two brands. So stay tuned for that, and if you like this video, please subscribe and like this video, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye.